Welcome to the Sheffield Sunday ABSI meeting. This is a main share meeting, and today it is with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome Fred L. from Florida, who's come to share for about 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for general sharing or if you'd like to ask a question. So thank you so much, Fred. It's wonderful to have you here, and the floor is yours.
All right, just had to unmute. Thank you everyone for having me back. I spoke for you guys about a year ago, and always an honor and a privilege to do service at an AA meeting. So I just woke up a few minutes ago. It's 8 o'clock where I am, and I go back and forth between South Florida and Long Island, New York. Right now I'm in New York. I always like to, I was taught to lead by example in this program, and I always start out with prayer, and I always pray out loud. For prayer, it's a very personal and unique process for each person. I always encourage people to try different methods, emulate, and just see what works to you, see what speaks to you. For me, I take a deep breath, I hold it in, and whenever it feels natural to exhale, I go with that, and then I just have an open and honest conversation with my God. And so, thank you, God, for that deep breath, for getting me centered in this moment, allowing me to feel grounded, safe, and protected. God, I lift this meeting up to you. There's people here seeking from all over the planet. God, please open up our hearts, our minds, our soul, our spirit. Allow this message to transfuse us. Allow us to feel your presence, tap into power, draw closer to you. God, if there's any prejudice, any bias, any obstacles to my recovery, to anyone's recovery who's listening to this, whether it's recorded or present, God, please help us to lay that aside. Show it to us that we can identify any blockages, any barriers to recovery, that we may cast this aside to have a brand new experience, that we may draw closer to you. Thank you, God, that we get to be here. We get to study this. We get to continue fighting, continue growing, and ultimately transform our life. God, help us to see today that this blessing with every inhalation, every exhalation, and allow me to come from gratitude. Thank you, God. Bless you, God. Praise you, God. All right. So, once again, thank you for having me. I spoke last year, and then I was in Newport, South Wales in May. I was asked to come out there and lead a 12-step series over the course of a weekend, and one of Young's sponsees was there. And so she passed my info back on to Young, and he asked me to, please come in and speak. And I told him it's an honor and a blessing, and I'd love to. And then the following week, I was asked to come to Birmingham, and I did a fourth step workshop for a group of about 20, 25 people, which was phenomenal. And they've asked me to come back. They're putting on a conference in December for me to come back and speak there. So hopefully I'll meet a few of you Brummies face to face, and especially some of you other locals. So I chatted with Young recently, and he asked me to pull up a reading. And that's why the last thing I always want to do is to choose something. I always want to kind of leave it up to God. And I had just been working with a sponsee that afternoon who was a chronic relapser. And anytime someone's a relapser, one of the first things I do, when they come back to me, is we want to take a good hard look at step 2 to see, which belief systems am I holding on to, which prejudices, which fixed ideas about God, about the big book, about AA, about spiritual growth, about anything and everything that I'm holding on to. Step 1 doesn't tell me that I can't drink. Step 1 promises me that I will drink again. I lack power, choice, and control. So step 1 reinforces the notion that if I'm an alcoholic, it's completely unnatural for me to ever not drink. And there will come a time and place when I will drink again against my own defense mechanism. So I need something outside of me to intercede on my behalf, to keep me safe and protected. And in AA, we present this God idea. And I love that the wording of the book is so masterful that it really does present zero conflict with any religion, background, or spiritual upbringing. As long as I study this book, and that's why good sponsorship is so essential, to go through this book word for word, page for page, action by action, prayer for prayer, and take a deep, hard look at it. And whenever it's asking a question, I always want to ask myself, what does this mean to me? Or if it's giving a fact that's challenging one of my belief systems, I always want to ask myself, what is it challenging? Why am I having an emotional, visceral reaction to a question that's being asked in a book? And so I just want to take a look at, at step two very, very deeply. So agnosticism, what does that word agnostic mean? That chapter, We Agnostic. So agnostic comes from the Greek root gnosis, which means knowledge, and that prefix a means without. So the title of the chapter is We Who Lack Knowledge of God. So who among us truly and really has knowledge of God? I mean, nobody. Um, I was taught, and it's a personal, um, idea to me, that anyone who claims that they know God, those are the people I don't want to listen to. I have an understanding of feelings, thoughts, and emotions that do not come from me. And the ones that come from me, I'm well aware of it. That's self-will. And the ones that don't come from me, I attribute that to God. And so the bottom of page 25 in our basic text, I love that this book does not mince words. I'm told that for my disease, I have two choices, and that's it. I could continue to blot out the intolerable consciousness of life as best as I can, which is me making choices based off of self-will. And the other thing I can do is accept spiritual help. And so if I look at the wording of that, accept spiritual help, the implication is that the spiritual help was always there. There was always something in some form of or another wanting me to reach out for help. I just had to accept it. And when I was going through my alcoholic career, and even a lot of areas of my life that were driven by self-will, the last thing I wanted to do was accept spiritual help. I wanted to manage my life myself. Because if I accept spiritual help, and if the outcome is unfavorable to me, well then, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself in harm's way? I had zero trust in God. And my religious upbringing started when I was very young. And then when I was a teenager, my mom got sick, and I asked, how could I help my mom? And they said, just pray to God and God's going to heal her. And I believed it. And I started praying to God with all my might. And not only did she not heal, but she died, and she suffered a terrible death. She had breast cancer, and she suffered horribly the last year or two of her life. So if there is a God, F him. I want nothing to do with him. He took my mom from me. And then as I got older, my academic career was all science-based, which is all writing out experimentation in a lab. And if you can't duplicate it, then it's not real. And you can't duplicate the God idea. You can't write it down. And so I had God on a spreadsheet growing up. It was all if-then statements. So if God is real, he would have healed my mom. If God is real, 9/11 would not have happened. If God is real, the Holocaust would not have happened. If God is real, the Crusades would not have happened. All these people that have been killed in the name of one person's God, how could there be a God? And Bill talks about this in his story, and I was so grateful for that, because it really presented a solid argument, one that was bouncing off in my head as well too. And for the co-founder of this program, a man who was so divinely inspired to come from a place of forced religion where he rebelled and he shut out that idea until he was faced with a life or death moment, well, that's exactly how I felt. And so I was so glad to read that in his 12-step call to us in Bill's story. And then as we go through the rest of the readings, and we're faced with this proposition that, God either is or he isn't. What is our choice to be? That's a really tall tale to make for a newcomer. And so if I look at step two, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, I want to take a look at those first three words. First I came, then I came to, and then I came to believe. And so that second step is really a forward-looking proposition. The first thing that happens is I come to AA, I come to this process. I want to surrender, but I don't know what I'm surrendering to. I want to let go of this disease, but I don't know what's on the other side of it. I keep hearing about self-will and God's will, and it sounds pretty, and it sounds fun, and it sounds good to sell books, but can that apply to me? Can that change me? Can that move me? Can that be real in my life? I don't know. But because I had such a grounding step one experience that really beat me into submission, and I'm a stubborn alcoholic. I don't like to raise the white flag. Surrender is not in my vocabulary. I fight to the death, like most of us alcoholics. I'm not special or unique in that ability. But laying aside every belief system I have to turn it over to this God of my misunderstanding, you guys are asking a lot. Thankfully, the other side of it was complete annihilation, destruction, and death. Death didn't fear me. It was the destruction and the annihilation of my life. And the book says many alcoholics, we have to be pretty badly mangled. What brings us together is our common problem, but what the glue that actually binds us is our pursuit of that common solution. So what is this common solution? Building a relationship with the God of our own understanding. So coming into the work, I've got zero understanding of God. And my own prejudice, my own belief systems about God were preventing me from having a brand new experience. So if I'm angry at God, how could I turn my will and my life over the care of God and say, manage everything in my life? That math does not work. So I was holding on to old religious ideas about God. My God stems from the Old Testament, which was a punishing God. How do I worship a punishing God? I had very punishing parents. I live in a very punishing and cruel world. Why would I want to turn my will and my life over the care of something that's going to hurt me because I have my own perspective, because I stray, because I butt heads? So I had very strong feelings towards religion, and I put spirituality in that same box. And so that chapter, we agnostics, we who lack knowledge of God, it's begging us. The entire chapter, there's one key word that's mentioned over and over and over again in many different forms, and that's the P word. That's prejudice. And I need to look at my prejudices. I need to identify them. When I came in, and still to this day, I've got very black and white thinking, where everything is wrong or right, everything is black or white, everything is light or dark, and that's it. And in the spiritual way of life, there's no right or wrong, there just is. So what happens to me is neither good nor bad, it just is. What I've just witnessed, what I've just experienced, what I've just felt, it's not wrong or right, it just is. And so when I can take out that black and white thinking, I'm reducing the stigma of my human interpretation and classification of these experiences. I'm putting everything in a box. When I can take away that prejudice, it's no longer in that box. And then I could have a brand new experience. I could potentially look at situations differently. And so the book, it just keeps reinforcing to set aside my prejudices, my preconceived notions, my fixed ideas about God, spirituality, religion, religious textbooks, and just have a brand new experience. And so, again, faced with alcoholic destructiveness or, these beautiful scenarios that are described in the book, which I believed for a long time were just written to sell a book. If I'm truly to believe the words in that book, what is my choice? And it's not an easy academic choice to make, which is why I need to go through the rest of the work in order to have that experience. And so a lot of these newcomers that I'm working with, and even people that have been around the block in AA and they're relapsing, and it's easy for them to put themselves in a box. Well, I guess I'm constitutionally incapable of being honest. I guess I'm one of those ones that is never going to get it. And I tell them, you're really not that special. You're not that unique that, millions of people on the planet can get this and you're not. You're not that personal that God's going to reject you, but me, he's going to bless. And the crackhead alcoholic who ran someone over, God's going to, give them permanent sobriety too, but not you. It comes down to our perspective. And I really need to take a hard look at this before I can move forward with the rest of the work. So the reading, page 137, beyond agnosticism, beyond my lack of knowledge of God. How do I go beyond this? I need to acquire knowledge. How do I acquire knowledge? Through experience. One of the aspects of this program that I loved, of spiritual way of living, is that it's opposite to my religious understanding from my forced religious upbringing of I need to believe because it's what's told to me. I need to believe because this is what's read to me. I need to believe because this is what's taught to me. And the spiritual way of life, or at least our amazing, brilliant, divinely inspired textbook, Alcoholics Anonymous, has a game plan written out for people like me. And it says, you don't believe me, that's fine. You don't have any other choice, either die a miserable existence or try this. Give this a fair shot. Not just give it a shot, but give it a fair shot. See, if I'm holding on to my old ideas about God, God's punishing, God doesn't like me, God's going to help everyone but me, God has no idea what he's doing, God's not qualified to manage my life, who the hell does he think he is? These will prevent me from fully immersing myself in this program, having an experience that'll save my life. So you see the conflict here. And that's why good sponsorship, it's not important. It's dire. This is life or death, people. And I work with a lot of people all over the world. And I spend a lot of time on this, especially for the chronic relapsers. So we of agnostic and temperament. So who has agnostic temperament? Every single one of us. Again, this is my perspective. None of us truly know God. We have experiences that we attribute to God. So let's take a quick moment before I move forward. Talk about God, G-O-D. So I told you how I had God on a spreadsheet, and there's an evolution in this process. There's an evolution in my prayer. There's an evolution. Oh, I'm sorry. Probably should have started with this. My sobriety date's March 26, 2008. So I have 17 and a half years, maybe, or 17 plus years. My relationship with God today is very different than it was last week, last month, last year, 10 years ago, 17 years ago, and 20 years ago. Even before I came in, I was seeking. And you're going to hear that statement time and time again, but we always want to take a look. What does that mean? It means my relationship with God, just like my relationship with my wife, just like my relationship with my 4.5-year-old son, every single day it's different. Every day my son grows and learns something new. Every day my wife and I have either conflict or we, come together in something. It changes. There's growth, there's new experiences, there's arguments, there's headbutting. And so every day is brand new experiences with these people. So if I'm relying upon my old experience with God to stay sober, to grow, of course it's going to be stale. I need brand new experiences. And so my relationship with God, the God idea has changed. Today, what is a higher power? A higher power is a force that has the ability to change the way I think, feel, or behave. Great example of a higher power, alcohol. I ingested alcohol. It changed me. Alcohol gave me a psychic change. I'm grateful for alcohol because it treated my untreated alcoholism for many, many years. And it worked. And it worked well. It worked very well. So alcohol became the solution to my spiritual malady because alcohol was a power greater than myself and I was powerless. So once I turned everything over to alcohol, alcohol being that rapacious creditor, at some point it no longer worked for me. I crossed that invisible line and it worked against me. Every freedom it gave me, now it wants it back plus interest. So now I need to find another higher power. Well, God on the shades and God in the rooms, and I was hearing a lot of personal opinions which pushed me away from God idea. And this was in AA. Our big book talks about going on the sordid spots of life with this, error in this firing line. And some AA meetings are some of the biggest sordid spots of life where you're going to encounter, people's interpretation of God, forcing it. And that's dangerous for alcoholics. And so thank God I had good sponsorship and good leadership, and people saw that I was thirsty and they jumped on me and taught me. And so today, my idea of a higher power, God, G-O-D, is just a three-letter word to describe the feelings, thoughts, and emotions that don't come from me. Is this the God of the Old Testament, the God of the New Testament, the God of the Quran, the God of the Bhagavad Gita, the Buddhist? I don't know. But it's not my job to figure it out. You see, as soon as I stop trying to figure out God, that's when I start to experience the power that today I call God. What God is and what God isn't, I have no idea, but I don't care. I stopped trying to figure it out. I stopped trying to identify it, and then I start to experience it. This is an experiential program. But if I'm holding on to my ideas about what I think God should be and what God should not be, I'm preventing myself from having this experience. And I'm challenging each and every one of you guys, 72 people in this room, including myself. What is your conception of God? Are you holding on to old ideas about what God should be and what God should not be? Are you putting God in this box? These are prejudices. These are a belief system. These are fixed ideas. We read how it works before most meetings. Everyone drowns it out. Says we have to lay aside our old ideas. The result is nil until we let go. Absolutely. What are my old ideas? These are prejudices. These are fixed ideas. Most of them are about God, about religion, about spirituality, about AA. This is what maybe a normal person can argue and debate, but for us, my life depends upon me laying this aside. So many people I work with and they're struggling, and you ask them, what is God? You get the boilerplate answer. Uh, and as sponsoring people, we're trained to kind of see through that. And we always want to spend some time breaking it down. What does God look like? What does the idea of God look like in your life? I sponsor a lot of women, and one of my old female sponsees, her previous sponsee, used to work for a company called Build-A-Bear, and then she created Build-A-God. You're coming into AA, lay aside the God of your religion, lay aside everything you think you know, build a brand new God, have a brand new experience. I always like that idea. Because God's a contractor, God's building us up, so we want to build up with him. So going back to the reading, we have agnostic temperament, so we who know nothing about God, but are faced with life and death, notice that it's a past tense word. So this is their experience. They're not speculating. They're not prognosticating. The collective that contributed to the authorship of this book discovered a very striking similarity with each one, that as soon, meaning the immediate response to laying aside prejudice. So what does that mean? I'll work with new people. I'll challenge them. Okay, this book is saying to lay aside prejudice. Paint me a portrait. Give me a visual. Use your words. What does that mean in your life to lay aside prejudice? Well, I can't lay something aside until I identify it. So by going through the chapter, we agnostic word for word, line by line. And every time I see a word that refers to prejudice or bias or old idea, I have to ask myself, do I have it? And some people, I'll use it as a writing assignment. Leaving aside the drink question, we tell why living is so unsatisfactory, and it lists every area of my life that I'm clinging to self-will. Well, what if there was a God idea attached to that? What's on the other side of that? What does that look like? And I see everything in my own words, my own thoughts, my own process. What's preventing me from having a brand new experience? So what does it look like to lay that aside? A very simple, humble statement. I don't know. I know shit. I know less than that. As soon as I think that I know something, self-will can reemerge just like that. And so the less I know, the better off I am. The dumber I am, the better off I am. I've worked with a lot of people that have learning disabilities, and I tell them, you guys are going to excel at this because you don't complicate things. Um, and, thank God, the longer I stay sober, I feel like the dumber I get and the easier my life becomes because I stop being part of the debate society and I'm less likely to have opinions on things, but I'm more malleable. And so this is me laying aside prejudice, laying aside belief systems, laying aside my negative bias, laying aside my preconceived judgments, laying aside spiritual terms that I don't like, spiritual people that rub me the wrong way. Um, my own feelings of feeling unworthy, rejected by this God. All of that, laying that aside and then expressing not a willingness, but even a willingness. And I tell the people I work with, anytime you see that word willing or willingness in this program, it means action. Okay, I can't just pray, God, please sprinkle some magic fairy dust over my head and change me. No. Everything is an action word. Faith is an action word. Love is an action word. I need brand new experiences, but you know, God can move mountains, but I have to bring the shovel. So I need to pray, discover, and be in action, be in motion. And so when I'm doing that, I'm expressing a willingness to believe in a power greater than myself. And it says we commence to get results. So at this point, step two, maybe even into step three, there's no pressure on the alcoholic. The pressure is on God. If I have done my best, listen, it's impossible. You're not going to lay everything aside. You're not going to identify. But if you can have just the slightest bit of willingness to say, maybe I don't know God, maybe God's not, you know what? I don't know anything. Maybe I've been wrong my entire life about this. Well, you know what? I don't want to drink. I don't want to drug. I don't want to die. I don't want to keep suffering. God, whatever you are, whatever you look like, whatever this is, please help me. Please give me a chance. The shortest prayer is just God. There's power in that name. And we give a lot of prayers in our basic text, our big book. And one thing I've learned over the years is that God doesn't hear my words. He feels my intentions. What is my truth? What's in my heart? See, if I'm just reading words off of the page of a book, whether it's the Bible, the big book, or any other spiritual scripture that you read, if it's not my truth, there's zero impact, and I'm going to blame God for not responding to my prayers. That's why when I start out that meeting, I pray and I give my process. My third step prayer, I personalize everything. Um, what is God doing? What is the problem? It's not alcohol, it's self. So what am I offering to God? Myself. Why? Because if I've lived a life run on self-will, I've been deconstructed. God is a contractor. He needs to reconstruct me. And so that's what he's doing in that third step. I'm offering self to God so he could reconstruct me. God, relieve me of the bondage of self. I wake up in the morning. This morning I woke up at 7:30. I set my alarm. My first word started with an F, and it wasn't my name. And then within a few minutes, as I'm making my coffee, I'm already on my third or fourth resentment. And this is me much better, 17 plus years. And so when I say my third step prayer, God, relieve me of the bondage of self, whatever crazy thoughts that are going through my head, whether it's I'm a piece of crap or I'm afraid about this coming work week or financial struggles or I don't want to do this. I list them. I'm specific about them. God, here, take this away because this is what's going through my mind. Relieve me of the bondage of self because I'm such a good person. No, because I can't be helpful to you guys or anyone else that I'm speaking with unless I lay this aside. So God, I need your help, and challenge your God in that moment. You're going to be victorious. God's going to relieve you of that bondage of self just so you could be helpful to him. And then finally, take away my difficulties. What am I struggling with that I need to be doing? Is it more prayer and meditation? Is it written inventory? Is it my job, giving 100% of my job? Is it communicating with someone? Is there an unfinished amends? Bring that into your third step prayer. Let God empower you to walk through this. Instead of doing this under your own volition, do it with God at your side. So relieve me of the bondage of self that I might better do your will. Take away these difficulties. Mention them. Why? That victory over them may bear witness. This is the most amazing trade in the history of the world. God's doing all these things for me. The only thing he's asking of me is to bear witness. This big hole in the front of my mouth that I'm using right now to talk about God's will, God's love, and God's way of life. That I might inspire someone, that I might give them hope that they're going to want this for themselves too, and that they're going to go through this process. And that's all that God's asking of me. That's it at this moment. And so this is why we're doing it. So this is what the willingness looks like. Express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves. We commence to get results. So the pressure is on God right now to reveal himself to you. The pressure is on God right now to answer these prayers, to show himself, to give you hope and inspiration. And then the rest of that sentence, even though it was impossible for any of us, even, I'm so sorry if there's members of the clergy in here, but for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. For me, G-O-D, it's not group of drunks. It's just a 3-letter word to describe the feelings, thoughts, and emotions that do not come from me. And as soon as I stop trying to define it, as soon as I stop trying to understand it, as soon as I stop trying to comprehend it, as soon as I stop trying to put it on paper, that's when I started to experience it. And then the bottom paragraph continues, many people soberly, what does it look like to be soberly? It means to be spiritually fit. This is not about the alcohol. Alcohol is not a not drinking program. Alcoholics Anonymous is not a not drinking program. Whenever I tell people, especially people that are not in AA, they look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, are you sure you're in AA? I'm like, yes. This is a program that connects me to a higher power. The byproduct of being spiritually fit and spiritually connected is that desire to drink or drug gets removed, gets cast aside, and I never have to make that choice again. See, I hear people in meetings share, I choose not to drink today. That's good for you. I can't make that choice. You know what? Even if 9 out of 10 times I can make the right choice, what about that one time I can't? So I need something to intercede completely. This cannot be a black and white scenario. It just means to be a one-case scenario that I do not drink. But it doesn't come from me. It comes from God. So many people soberly assure me that man has no better place in the universe than that of another competing organism fighting its way through life only to perish the end. Hearing this, I feel that I still prefer to cling to the so-called illusion of religion, which in my own experience has meaningfully told me something very different. And so when I started to have spiritual awakenings within AA and brand new perspectives of God, I was able to go to churches, I was able to go to mosques, I was able to go to temples and study different religions. I started to read old religious textbooks, and ironically enough, the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Hindu Bible, I identified with that one the most because they talk about reincarnation, and that just felt right to me. And I realized that now my job is just to keep seeking. My job is just to keep growing, and that this prejudice, this God idea, this conviction that I have that worked for me yesterday, that worked for me last week, might not work for me tomorrow. And so I need to keep having brand new experiences with God. Now, I mentioned I'm sober over 17 years. I've had more traumatic events happen to me in that 17 plus years than my 32 years prior. Um, I've had more, some days my third step prayer is like, screw you, God. Do you even know what the hell you're doing? Where the hell are you in my life? And that's okay because that's honest. Prayer does not have to be worship. Prayer does not have to be praise. In this case, prayer just has to be honesty. And so if God is all powerful, if God, is omnipotent, then God can handle me cursing him out, challenging him. One of the greatest experiences I had from a teacher, who was actually a therapist, told me, challenge God, butt heads with God. You don't have to accept something that someone told you at face value. You need to have your own experience with your God. And so I fight with God tooth and nail about everything. And that's what has created such faith today because of those experiences. See, AA told me you're going to develop faith as a direct consequence of going through this work over and over and over again and having brand new experiences. And as a result, your faith is going to be rock solid. It's not going to be shakeable. It's not going to be fallible. And that's been true to me. So no one told me, believe because I believe. What they told me is, you want this, or even if you don't want this and you want to challenge this, have the experience, go through it, come back and tell me that I'm wrong. And I was so stubborn and so defiant and so intent on proving them wrong that I went out and gave 100% of myself to this very simple process that I tried to complicate. And the end result is that I got well. We talk about that second step on the shades, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. People always talk about sanity as doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. That's an Albert Einstein quote. That's not how AA uses insanity. The book uses it very differently. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over when I know what the result's going to be. I know what happens when I pick up that first drink. I know what happens when I get drunk. I know what happens when I start slipping in some white powder or alcohol in pill form or whatever, mind-altering substances at arm's length. I know it's going to happen. I had years of empirical evidence from my drinking career to demonstrate this. Nothing was going to be different. So I wasn't expecting it. I was hoping for a different result, but I was not expecting it. And so Bill talks about insanity, wholeness or wellness of mind, lack of proportion of the ability to think straight. Even to this day, if I have a headache, Tylenol bottle says take 1 or 2. My mind still says 2 or 3 or better. If I, go to the AA meeting and they've got cookies out and my mind, I should grab one. My mind's like, you know what, take 2 or 3. Everything about me, I'm hardwired that more is better. Lack of proportion of the ability to think straight, spelled out, and there is a solution. There is me in black and white. So this is why I can't trust me. I can't trust my thinking. I can't trust my logic. I can't trust my rationale. I can't trust my emotions. I need to trust something outside of it, which in this case is this word G-O-D. But I'm not going to lay everything I believe and know to be true aside until I have that proper step 1 experience. And then that step 2 experience is going through the whole rest of the work. I'm not going to believe, and I'm still going to hold on to prejudices as I go through the work. And then as I go through the work, new prejudices will be created and they will evolve. And then I go through the work again and I start to have brand new experiences and lay those aside. And this is why 12-step work is paramount. When I'm taking other people through the work, I'm in the process. And when I'm sharing with them about prejudices, God reveals to me prejudices that I have this day, that day. Again, I'm up here preaching about God, based off of a couple sentences. And, you guys would think I sit here, worship and love God. I do, but there's days it's the exact opposite. And there's days I'm questioning him, and there's days I'm wondering what the hell he thinks he's doing. And that's okay. That's completely okay because that's part of the journey. And every time I'm taking someone through, there's a brand new prejudice that's revealed to me. And I see how self could rebuild to shut out this God idea that saved my life so quickly. And this is why it just reinforces bottom of page 25. I'm faced with two choices: continue to blot out the intolerable consciousness of life as best as I could, or the other, to accept spiritual help. Today, I'm accepting spiritual help, or at least I am in this moment. And that's why I came here to speak to you guys, to share my experience, my strength, and my hope. And God willing, leave you guys with some inspiration to have a brand new experience. Once again, my name is Fred. I'm a grateful, recovered alcoholic, and I'd love to hear from you guys.
Oh, thank